The text message glowed on Sarah's phone, a beacon of betrayal on our nightstand. Asterisk, tomorrow, 6 a.m. class. Can't wait to see you crush it. Chad, my wife, and Chad. My stomach twisted into a knot of ice. I was Mark Caldwell, a man who managed millions at Granite Peak Financial, predicting market shifts with chilling accuracy. Yet, I'd been blind to the crash happening in my own Denver home. For months, her late nights at the gym were a lie. The scent of chalk and sweat on her clothes wasn't just from her workout. It was from Swig's, Donks. Their CrossFit box had become their sanctuary, a place built on strength. Well, I had strength. My revenge wouldn't be a shouting match, it would be silent and measured in pounds on a barbell and seconds on a clock. The next morning, I walked into mile-high strength and conditioning. The air was thick, with the scent of sweat and ambition. And there they were. Sarah, my wife of 12 years, laughing as a mountain of a man named Chad spotted her on the bench press. He was a caricature of alpha male confidence, tattoos snaking up a thick neck, a booming laugh that filled the cavernous space. His hand lingered on her shoulder a second too long, a proprietary touch. My portfolio of their betrayals was now fully vested, the evidence undeniable. I approached the front desk, my face a mask of calm neutrality, as I watched their reflection in the mirror. Sarah's eyes finally met mine and widened in shock. "Mark, what are you doing here?" Her voice was a nervous whisper. Chad swaggered over, wiping his hands on his shorts. He looked me up and down, my work slacks and button-down a stark contrast to his compression gear. "Babe, who's this?" he asked, not even looking at me, his focus entirely on her. "Just getting in shape," I said, my voice cutting through their little bubble. I handed my credit card to the manager. "Needed a new hobby." My smile didn't reach my eyes. The first investment in their downfall was made. 12 years. Our marriage had been a blue-chip stock. Stable, reliable, with compounding returns. We built our life in the shadow of the Rockies the same way I built portfolios at Granite Peak, brick by brick, with a clear vision for the future. I was the architect, working 80-hour weeks, turning market volatility into security, knife-hour temp security. But while I was staring at stock tickers, I missed the most critical indicator of all, the slow, corrosive decay in my own home. A bear market of the heart. It started innocently enough. Sarah needed an outlet, something for herself. A 30-day fitness challenge. I was proud. I encouraged her, happy she'd found a passion. I was a fool, funding the construction of the very weapon that would be used against me. The hobby metastasized. Soon, our evenings of shared dinners were replaced by the clatter of her meal-prepping Tupperware and the constant, aggressive rattle of a protein shaker. The language of our home changed next. It became a foreign dialect of WODs, AMRAPs, and PRs. She spoke of the box with the reverence she once reserved for our anniversary. Then, one name began to surface with alarming frequency: Chad. Chad helped me fix my kettlebell swing. Chad's a beast on the rower. I logged him as a minor data point, a gym friend. A fatal miscalculation. I failed to see he wasn't a friend. He was a hostile takeover. The text message was just the confirmation of a failure that had been compounding for months. The real betrayal was the 5 a.m. alarms I slept through while she crept out of our bed to meet him. It was the calluses on her hands that weren't from holding mine. It was the community they built in sweat and shared agony, a bond forged in a crucible I was never invited to witness. They didn't just steal moments, they built an entire world without me, right under my roof. They thought they were strong. Staring at them now, across the rubber-matted floor of their sanctuary, I saw my path with perfect clarity. I wasn't just going to join their world, I was going to own it. My first workout of the day, the WOD, was a symphony of humiliation. I moved with the grace of a filing cabinet, falling down a flight of stairs. While Sarah and Chad glided through burpees and box jumps, their bodies a testament to their shared secret, I fumbled with an empty barbell, my dress socks slipping inside my new cross trainers. The coach shouted cues I didn't understand. Elbows through, hips back. It was their language, their world, and I was an illiterate intruder. Across the gym, I saw them. They weren't even trying to hide it. A shared smirk. A whispered comment from Chad that made Sarah cover her mouth, her shoulders shaking with laughter. They saw a midlife crisis, a pathetic attempt to reclaim something already lost. They saw weakness. In my world, you don't mock weakness. You acquire it, strip it for parts, and build something stronger. Careful there, Chief, Chad called out during my clumsy attempt at a clean. Don't want to throw your back out on day one. He then hoisted a cartoonishly large amount of weight over his head, with a theatrical grunt, winking at Sarah. Her approval was his dividend. Sarah walked over, her face a mask of patronizing concern. Mark, this is really intense. Maybe you should try the beginner's class? Her voice was soft, but the message was a hammer blow. You don't belong here. I just nodded, my lungs burning, my pride shredded into worthless stock. Just getting a feel for it. I managed to gasp. I didn't engage. I didn't argue. An emotional response is a liability. This was the due diligence phase, and I was gathering data. Every condescending glance, every shared laugh, was a key performance indicator of their arrogance. Their overconfidence was a market bubble, inflated by ego and secrecy. And I knew exactly how bubbles end. They pop. My life became a brutal ledger of pain and progress. Before the market opened, I was at the gym. After it closed, I was back. I hired a private coach, a former Olympic weightlifter named Anya, meeting her at a different gym across town. She was my secret asset, my off-the-books consultant. She broke down my movements with brutal efficiency, rebuilding me from the ground up, stripping away decades of sedentary weakness. She taught me to breathe, to brace, to explode. At Mile High, I was the struggling novice. With Anya, I was the undervalued asset being re-engineered for a hostile takeover. I became a ghost in their peripheral vision. I never spoke to them, never acknowledged their presence beyond a curt nod. I just worked. I studied their movements like an analyst studies a company's balance sheet. Chad's engine was poor. His output plummeted on any workout longer than 10 minutes. Sarah's mental game was fragile. Her form crumbled when a workout got truly painful. I found their liabilities. Weeks bled into a month, then 2. The empty barbell was replaced by clanking iron plates. My clumsy movements found a violent rhythm. The other gym members who once looked at me with pity now offered nods of respect. I was no longer the suit who wandered in by mistake. I was becoming part of the foundation. One Tuesday, the workout was a brutal couplet of rowing and heavy thrusters. It was designed to punish. It was Chad's kryptonite. I deliberately set up my barbell next to his. He shot me a dismissive look. The clock started. I found a pace, a dark, methodical rhythm Anya had drilled into me. In my head, it wasn't a workout. It was a liquidation. At the 10-minute mark, I heard him falter, his breathing ragged. I kept moving, one representative after another. When the final timer beeped, I collapsed, my body screaming, but not before I saw it. I had finished 3 reps ahead of him. Sarah was staring, her mouth slightly agape. For the first time, the look in her eyes wasn't pity. It was shock. The initial investment was beginning to pay. My first dividend. I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile. I simply unclipped my feet from the rower and rose, my movements deliberate. A successful transaction doesn't require an emotional response, it just requires documentation. I walked over to the whiteboard and wrote my score next to my name with a steady hand. Must have been a miscount. Chad wheezed from the floor, his face the color of a bad investment. He refused to look at me, directing his comment to the ceiling. His ego was in free fall, and he was desperately trying to find a floor. The numbers are on the board, I replied, my voice flat. I didn't look at him either. I was already wiping down my barbell, treating him like background noise. In my world, results are audited. His opinion was irrelevant. Sarah finally moved, walking towards me, her expression a jumbled portfolio of confusion and something I hadn't seen in years, uncertainty. Mark, That was incredible. I didn't know you could." She trailed off, searching for the right words. She was trying to recalibrate, to fit this new data point into her existing model of me as the predictable, sedentary husband. The model was broken. "You should hydrate," I said, cutting her off cleanly. The advice was generic, dismissive. It was the kind of thing you'd say to a colleague, not your wife. I turned and picked up my gym bag. I didn't give her a chance to respond, to try and process this with me, to make it about *TS. There was no phi's in this equation anymore. I walked past Chad, who was now sitting up, glaring at my back. I could feel the heat of his stare, the impotent rage of a man whose dominance had just been publicly questioned. He was a bull, used to an empty ring. I was the matador he never saw coming. As I pushed through the gym doors into the cool Denver morning, I felt nothing. No elation, no satisfaction. This wasn't a victory. It was an adjustment, a market correction. Their shared world was built on the assumption of my weakness, my absence. I had just demonstrated, with cold, hard data, that their foundational premise was flawed. And a flawed foundation is the first sign of a coming collapse. The silence in our house became an asset class of its own, volatile and heavy. Sarah tried to engage, to open a dialogue about my sudden dedication to fitness. Her attempts were like weak buyout offers for a company I already controlled. I rejected them with non-answers and the rustle of the Wall Street Journal. She'd ask how my day was. "Productive," I'd say, not looking up. She wanted to talk about the gym. I changed the subject to quarterly earnings reports. I was building a wall between us, brick by brick, using the same material she and Chad had used to build their world: exclusion and a private language. A week after my small victory on the rower, a flyer went up on the gym's community board. It was for the Mile High Throwdown, the box's annual in-house competition. It was a local affair, a $100 prize, a tub of protein, and bragging rights. For the members, it was the pinnacle of their year. For me, it was an undervalued asset. The current sponsorship was a local supplement shop. The event had potential, but it was undercapitalized. I found the owner, Dave, a harried man in his late 30s, trying to keep his passion project afloat. I approached him not as a member, but as a managing partner from Granite Peak Financial. I didn't talk about fitness. I talked about brand synergy, community engagement, and return on investment. "Dave," I began, my voice calm and professional. "The Throwdown is a great community builder, but it could be more. It could be an event that puts this gym on the map." He eyed my workout gear, then my face, trying to square the sweaty guy from the 6 a.m. class with the corporate predator standing before him. "What do you have in mind?" he asked, cautious. "Granite Peak Financial would like to be the title sponsor," I said. "We'll quintuple the prize money for the top male and female athletes. We'll provide new equipment for the event. We'll cater it. We turn this from a backyard barbecue into a premier Denver fitness event. All we ask for in return is naming rights and a banner behind the podium." I watched him process the numbers. His eyes widened. It was an offer he couldn't refuse. I wasn't just offering money. I was offering legitimacy. He was a small business owner, and I spoke his language. We shook hands. The deal was closed. My strategic acquisition of their sanctuary was complete. The announcement email landed in every member's inbox 2 days later. Mile High Strength and Conditioning is proud to announce its partnership with Granite Peak Financial for the newly named Granite Peak Throwdown. My name wasn't on it, but it didn't need to be. The connection was obvious. I walked into the gym that evening and the atmosphere had shifted. The usual grunts and clanging of weights were underscored by whispers. I was no longer the quiet suit in the corner. I was the house. I was the market maker. Chad was holding court by the pull-up rig, his usual bravado curdled into something sour. He saw me and his laughter died in his throat. He and his cronies looked at me, then looked away, a flicker of resentment in their eyes. I had invaded their territory with a weapon they didn't understand. Capital. Sarah cornered me by the water fountain, her face pale. "Mark, Granite Peak? What are you doing?" "It's a corporate sponsorship, Sarah. Good for the community. Good for business." I filled my water bottle, my movements slow and deliberate. "This isn't about business. You hate this stuff. You called it a cult 6 months ago. Now you're funding their biggest party of the year? Her voice was rising, laced with a panic she couldn't conceal. She was seeing the chessboard, and her pieces were suddenly in check. Perspectives change, I said, screwing the cap on my bottle. I see value here now. A lot of driven, high-net-worth individuals in one place. It's a sound investment. Don't do this, she whispered, her eyes pleading. Don't do this to me, to us. The word sung in the air, a ghost of a stock that had already been delisted. I'm just a sponsor, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I let her see the abyss that had opened up behind my eyes. Chad's the reigning champion, isn't he? He should be thrilled about the prize money. It's a 5-fold increase on his potential earnings. I paused, letting the words sink in, twisting the knife. Tell him I said good luck. I'm looking forward to the competition. I walked away, leaving her standing there, the implications of my move crashing down around her. This was no longer their private playground. I had just monetized their affair. I had turned their passion into a transaction, and I was the one setting the price. The competition was in 3 weeks. They would train, they would sweat, they would push their bodies to the limit. And every single rep, every drop of sweat, would be for a prize funded by the man they had betrayed. They were now performing for me. The due diligence was over. It was time for the hostile takeover to begin. The 3 weeks leading up to the Granite Peak Throwdown were a masterclass in market psychology. The gym, once their sanctuary, became a pressure cooker of my design. The increased prize money I'd injected into the system transformed friendly competition into raw ambition. Every athlete pushed harder, their eyes on the cash. Especially Chad. His training became a spectacle of rage. He attacked the weights, his grunts echoing like cannon fire, each lift a desperate attempt to reassert his dominance. He was a volatile stock, spiking with aggression but destined for a crash. He'd stare at me across the floor, his eyes burning with a hatred that was a liability in his portfolio. I ignored him. I was a blue chip, my progress slow, steady, and inevitable. With Anya, I refined my strategy, focusing on efficiency and endurance. Chad's documented weaknesses. Sarah was trapped in the fallout. The tension clung to her, ruining her form, slowing her down. She moved like a CEO navigating a hostile takeover, uncertain and panicked. She tried to approach me once more in our silent kitchen. Mark, call it off, please. This is cruel. It's a business sponsorship, Sarah, I replied, not looking up from my tablet. Cruelty is a poor metric for evaluating an investment. My voice was flat, the final word on a closed account. She flinched as if struck. Communication ceased. Competition day arrived. The gym was unrecognizable. My company's logo, Granite Peak Financial, was everywhere. On banners, on the athletes' t-shirts, on the new weight plates themselves. I had branded their world. I stood observing the controlled chaos, a fund manager watching the opening bell. Chad strutted through the crowd, pounding his chest, soaking in the attention. He was an over-leveraged asset, high on his own hype. Sarah avoided my gaze, her face a pale mask of dread. The first event was a sprint, a fast, heavy barbell complex. It was built for Chad's brand of explosive, unsustainable power. He tore through it, his time landing him at the top of the leaderboard. He shot me a triumphant sneer as he wrote his score. I finished 7th, methodical, unrushed, conserving energy. He saw it as a victory. I saw it as him spending his capital too early. The second event was announced. The long fall. A brutal 20-minute workout. A descending ladder of heavy deadlifts and burpees over the bar. It was a test of will, a war of attrition designed to punish ego and reward pacing. It was Anya's specialty. It was the event I'd been waiting for. I set up my bar near the center of the floor. Chad, high on his early win, chose the station right next to me. A final act of intimidation. The clock started. He flew out of the gate, ripping the barbell from the floor with a furious velocity, his back rounding dangerously on each rep. The crowd cheered him on. I settled into the rhythm Anya had beaten into me. Breathe, brace, lift. Calm, efficient, relentless. Around the 12-minute mark, the market turned. Chad's pace faltered. His explosive energy was gone, spent on ego. His breaths came in ragged, desperate gasps. I pulled even with him, my movements still measured, still precise. He glanced at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and panic. He had never been challenged like this. He responded the only way he knew how, with more force. He grabbed his barbell for the next set of deadlifts, his form, already poor, completely disintegrated. He tried to muscle the weight up with pure, raw ego. There was a sound. Not the clang of the bar, but a wet, sickening pop that cut through the noise of the gym. He screamed, a high, thin sound of agony, and collapsed. The heavy barbell crashed to the mat. A wave of silence washed over the crowd. He writhed on the floor, clutching his lower back, his face a grotesque mask of pain. His speculative bubble had just burst in the most public way imaginable. Medics rushed to his side. Sarah cried out his name, frozen in place for a moment before running to him. I did not stop. The clock was still running. I finished my rep, then another, my pace unbroken. I moved through the burpees, a solitary, methodical machine amidst the unfolding human drama. When the final buzzer sounded, I was standing, chest heaving, sweat stinging my eyes. I walked past them, past Sarah kneeling beside him, her face streaked with tears, past Chad, the fallen champion, his body a broken asset being prepared for liquidation. I didn't look at them. I walked to the whiteboard, picked up the marker, and wrote my score. First place. Then I turned and finally met Sarah's horrified gaze from across the room. I offered her a slight, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a gesture of comfort. It was a confirmation of services rendered. The market had corrected itself. The gym was a cathedral of silence, all eyes on me. The members who had once pitied me now stared with a new kind of understanding. They weren't just looking at the winner of a local fitness competition. They were looking at a shark that had just bled its rival in their tidy little fish tank. I walked towards the locker room, my footsteps the only sound besides the distant, frantic murmur of the medics attending to Chad. There was no elation, no fist pump. This was not a celebration. It was a liquidation. A necessary, painful, and deeply satisfying closing of a bad position. She cornered me by the lockers, her body blocking my path. Her face was a wreck of mascara and fury. "How could you?" she choked out, her voice raw. "You saw he was struggling. You just kept going. You wanted this to happen. You wanted him broken." I turned, my expression unreadable. I folded my competition shirt, the one bearing the Granite Peak Financial logo, and placed it neatly in my bag. I met her gaze, my own eyes as cold and clear as a winter morning in the Rockies. "Want is an emotional, undisciplined word," I said, my voice level. "I don't deal in wants. I deal in outcomes." Chad's outcome was a direct result of his own flawed fundamentals. He was all aggression, no strategy. All ego, no endurance. A high-risk asset destined to fail. I simply created the market conditions for his inevitable collapse. "This isn't a market," she screamed, her voice cracking, drawing stares from the hallway. "This was a man. This was about us." "No," I said, my voice dropping, cutting through her hysteria with surgical precision. "There is no us. You delisted that stock months ago. You made a new investment. You chose him. You admired his perceived strength, his dominance." I took a step closer, forcing her to look at me. "All I did was hold up a mirror. I showed you what real strength looks like. It's not loud. It's not theatrical. It's disciplined. It's relentless. It finishes the workout." I zipped my bag shut with a final, sharp sound. "He didn't lose to me, Sarah. He lost to a caricature of himself. You fell for a fraud. My only moral obligation was to expose it." Is channeling your anger into outperforming them like this an absolute power move, or is it just a petty way to prolong the drama?